Let's see here.
There you are.
Let's see. Are we up here?
Okay, so I can only see. Oh no, I can see everybody.
And we're here. Ashe. All right. We are coming in now live. Peace, love, and welcome to this soul to soul conversation. My name is Iama.
Uh-oh.
All right. Now I can see people coming in the room and hey, Mari, girl, get in this room. Hey, Derry. Guys, we're having a live conversation. I need you to tell me if you can see this. If you can see this and if you can hear me. This is monumental, our first time doing this live on the platform. Please tell me if you can both see and hear me. Yes, tell me in the comments so that I can know that I can see. It looks perfect. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Peace, love, and healing to everyone. Welcome to this soul to soul conversation. My name is Iama. Please share this out. We have a powerful conversation tonight about healing from abuse and toxic love. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and although 2020 could be called Mental Health Awareness Year, because many people have been dealing with anxiety and depression and relationship issues and suicidal thoughts rapidly and steadily during this time. So tonight's conversation is extremely crucial and very timely. So please share this out to all the people on your timeline. We have two powerful sisters tonight who are going to give us a tag team and share how they have a common denominator in their healing experience. Nichelle Wilson and Brandi Washington, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, these two ladies have a very powerful testimony, but I want to start by saying that, Brandi, I know you said that God put this on your heart to be able to share and have this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
I mean, obviously, most importantly, it's May and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. But as I've been journaling, as we've all been stuck in the house, just a lot of thoughts and reflection from my past, healing and traumas have come up on the paper. And I just feel like right now is the time that God wants us to share our testimony and hopefully help somebody out there. So.
Ashe. I agree. You know, 2020 has been a very intense year for all of us. And so many people are for the very first time having to face truth about their realities, beliefs that we have been living out, and changes we have to make. So tonight, I really think your testimony is going to help a lot of people. So y'all know I love icebreakers. We got one right now. Are y'all ready? Are y'all down? And I want y'all to play this too in the comments, because I want you to know that this is going to be an in-your-face, raw and real conversation, because healing happens below the surface. So we're going to get naked tonight. Not in a literal sense, I'm not in my 20s anymore, but in a spiritual sense, we're going to get raw and real. So are you two ladies down to do the icebreaker activity?
Yes, I'm scared, but yes.
Okay, fear is a sign we're overcoming, Nichelle.
Yes.
Okay, so the first icebreaker activity is this. I'm going to ask you to use the first letter of your first name to describe yourself in one word. And also using that letter, describe something you're working on in your soul work. Because as a shaman, I'm always wondering what we're doing in our soul. Yes. So I'll start. Iama, so my letter is I. A word that I would use to describe myself would be incomparable, because I learned over time that my uniqueness and my idiosyncrasies are not burdens, but they're gifts. And so I don't try to compare myself, because I know I can't fit in, so I don't even try, and that gives me more confidence and it helps my insecurities. So I would say incomparable. I'm just me, and that's all I can be. And it feels great. It clears so much. So I would use that letter. And then for something I'm working on, with I would say implementing boundaries, because I am working on continuing to create healthy boundaries with me and other people to decide what I'm going to do for me, what I'm going to do for other people, what I'm going to let other people do for me, what they're not going to do for me, how they're going to act, how I'm not going to act, to keep me growing spiritually. So these boundaries are my lifeline and they keep me from being abused. So that's what I'm working on. So who wants to go next? Nichelle, Brandi?
I'll go next. That's fine.
Okay.
For me, I'll choose beautiful for Brandi.
Aw.
Not to be cliche, but I mean, I'm always told that I have a beautiful spirit. So, and I live with that, and I walk in that. So, I'm going to own the beauty within me as far as my soul is concerned. And then for the next one, I would say being bold. I just want to be bolder in my decisions, in my career path, and in other areas of my life. So I would choose bold to be my other word.
Awesome. I think for me, in that represents me is probably, I would have to say, a networker, a true networker, connect the dot type of person, want to connect this person with that person. Oh, you should network. And I've always been told that I have a huge network, or quote unquote, a lot of friends, but it's just, I love networking and connecting people for the right purpose in life. And it's something that I work on, and I'm probably going to work on to the day I die, is not worrying. So the not piece in front of worrying, because I'm a warrior at the same time. So I worry about myself, others, my child, people that are important to me, people that I don't know. And I can sometimes worry so much that I can just, it'll put me in a bad place if I'm not careful.
Ashe. I think that that's hard for any Virgo, though. It's your attention to detail for you and everybody else. So we see y'all working on it, but we need that. That's how y'all lead so well. So thank you for working on that. And I want y'all to know too, there's a little bit of a delay inside this as we're doing the Zoom. I can't see or hear you, but I can hear your responses to me. And I can also see a little bit of the thread. So I want to include everybody in this opening activity called Vulnerably Me. I can see the comments moving, so I'm going to ask you all to participate. Nichelle and Brandi are warriors and very brave, because it's not easy to heal, and spiritual ascension and development is not for the faint of heart. So on tonight, I just want to celebrate both of you. So cheers to you ladies for being vulnerable enough and authentic enough in your own soul healing to share your story and journey, which people are already getting free from just by you being here. So cheers to that.
Thank
and
you.
Yes, girl, please get something and throw
Look
it
at
back.
Nichelle.
I'm talking about it for real. So, okay, just to set the atmosphere, there's going to be all authenticity, no judgment, and unconditional love. So in the comments, I want you all to participate. We're going to have 3 questions that we're going to ask in a little game called Vulnerably Me. Because everyone's going to be vulnerable tonight, including you joining. Because see, you thought this was just a conversation, but it's not. It's an activation. Yes, an activation is different from a conversation. After an activation, you are completely and totally different in your energy and aura, which is your energetic field, and the way you act in life is never the same. It's a permanent experience. So I don't play with it. Everybody on the thread who knows me, hey, Sharon, hey, Jasmine, girl, you better get in here. We playing a game of vulnerability. Come on. Now, y'all gonna raise your hands, and so are Nichelle and Brandi. Okay, I'm gonna ask 3 questions. The name of the game is called Vulnerably Me, and it all starts with a little comment called Never Have I Ever, which is a play on the 90s classic Without the Alcohol. Okay, well, or with it. I mean, if you got some, bring it and let's go. I'm gonna say 3 things, and first I'm gonna say never have I ever, which is what folks do when they lie about themselves, right? And so if you have done that, though, I want you to raise your hand. So we'll do a little warm up. Never have I ever had sushi. There you go. Okay. And I want you to put the little hand up in the thread.
Yeah, that means I had sushi. Okay.
Okay, so we got it. So here's the first question. Never have I ever felt completely alone, even though I was surrounded by other people. Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. Second question. Never have I ever had a friend or relationship that was draining to be around, but I didn't have the confidence to cut them off.
Ah.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. Don't you love that? I love those lessons. Man, we are so alike. Okay, last one. Never have I ever been the victim of slander, gossip, or scandalous lies about me in my circle or peer group. Oh my gosh. See, isn't healing fun? We all have so much in common. So that's the point. We have a lot more in common than we think. And that couldn't be more true than for these two powerful sisters here on tonight. So I want to start by asking Nichelle, give us a little bit of the backstory of how you and Brandi came into each other's lives.
Okay. So it's about 4 years ago, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. We refer to ourselves as sister wives, and just our running joke of our story, and we just always said it in joking, and we just kind of stuck with it. And sister wives, because actually we were both married to the same person, not at the same time, actually years apart. So that's why we call ourselves that. But I met Brandi, again, she was beautiful and bold, and walked up to me in a courtroom that I was staying there by myself, because I, as we get into the story, we'll hear more, but I did my due diligence and wanted to go to a case to hear, a court case happen. And she was there helping another young lady. And she recognized me and walked up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Brandi." And I was like, "I know who you are." And she said, "Well, I just want to let you know that no matter what, no matter when, I will be here for you if you need me." And she walked away. And I think she doesn't know this, but I went into the bathroom in that courtroom and I cried. I felt like God had placed her at that moment at that right time. She didn't even know that I was at the time pregnant. And God had just placed her in my life at that moment for later, preparing me for being able to use her through my healing process, and ironically her being able to use me through hers later on. So that's what happened. And then about a year later, I said, "Hey, remember me? I need you." And we probably talked almost every day after that point. And it was just an organic relationship that grew out of pain and hurt. But I'm so happy to say that we also matured out of that, and that we celebrate happy moments with each other. And it's just something that's so organic and real. And I couldn't even make this up if I wanted to, nor could I ever see myself saying, "Oh, I got a sister wife," like that's just not me. If you know me, that is not me, but it's me today. And I'm proud of it.
Well, let's talk about the sister wiveness of your relationship. Brandi, take me back to that day where you first approached Nichelle, and what was the intention and heart and mindset behind having that conversation with her?
Wow. I, like she mentioned, at the time I was helping another woman through her situation with the same man. And all I knew at that time was that I knew at some point she was going to feel what I had felt. And I wanted to be there to help her. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know what I was going to be able to do specifically to help her, but I knew that she was going to need me at some point. And it was, God just said, "Hey, you better take this opportunity right now while he's not around to go up to her and tell her." And it was the most passionate moment that I remember. for me to just walk up to her and just give her all of me. It was literally just love. And I knew from that moment on that God was in control of the situation. So.
Wow. Wow. I always say I am so glad Holy Spirit knows us all. So
Yeah.
while you, Nichelle, were going through this point in your marriage as you were pregnant, where were you at that point in terms of your relationship with your ex-husband and your realization of whether or not you were going to stay, and what was happening in terms of your experience at that time that you knew you were about to experience a shift there?
For me, I was in a state of confusion, a state of shock, a state of just, again, that question you asked, being surrounded by so many people, being happy for me at a time that I was looking like I was really happy, but I really wasn't. So that's the state that I was in. I don't know if because I was pregnant, it just had put me in a different mindset. But in a mindset of not just protecting myself, but protecting this unborn child. And so that's the state that I was in. But that opened up the door for me to continue to do my research and my due diligence that I thought I did. But as I moved and uprooted my life to a new place that was very unfamiliar to me, it allowed me to see things that I was blinded by before. And so as like, again, her helping another young lady at the courthouse against this person that did not ask me to be at the courthouse, me just being me, like, something's not right. I feel like I need to just show up and be there and figure out what's going on here. So it just opened up that door for me to keep on going. And it wasn't again until a year later that I actually reached back out to Brandi, but that sparked a fire in me that let me know that God is leading me in the right direction to continue doing what I'm doing. But again, that relationship was very toxic and very abusive. So I had to move in a different way where I still was being supportive. I still was being a loving wife and caring for, at the time, a stepchild that I had, and did not want to disrupt another child's life, because children don't ask to be here, so.
It seems like Brandi's discernment was aware of you being in the place that you were going to be when you met. Can you walk us through some of those signs and some of those final straws of the abuse that you were experiencing, to give examples of what toxic love looks like to people who don't know, or who do know because they're experiencing it, but they are not willing to be aware that this is calling itself love, but it's not love?
Brandi, I think she's talking to you.
Oh, for me. Oh, sorry.
Or either one of you. I know you're sister wives. So
I guess I'll go first. I think, well, first it's important to say that everything at the beginning was beautiful. He was the perfect picture of a man. Everything that you probably want or was on your list, he had it, as far as, just having a degree and just having it all together. He knew everything to say. He was very romantic. But the signs for me that showed me that it was toxic was that I just felt confused every day of my life. I was never comfortable and I was never at peace. I was always in a state of confusion. I didn't know who I was, and I really lost, if I had ever even knew who I was, I had lost who I thought I was. And so, that was pretty much my sign. My main sign was just being confused on who I was.
I want to ask Nichelle for her examples too, but I also want to give you a huge thumbs up and a huge cheers, because toxic love, for anyone who doesn't know, is just a love that turns you on yourself. Whenever you're loving someone and in the midst of loving them, you start sabotaging, losing yourself. That's like the first sign that regardless of what's happening on the surface, a lot of times you're being somehow drained energetically or emotionally manipulated. Nichelle, what were some of your experiences, or when did you start to feel like, I'm losing myself here and I don't like it?
I felt that immediately when my things were moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Houston, Texas. It was like the day that the movers came. That day, I remember like it was yesterday. And it was almost like a light bulb went off and was like, oh, I got her for good now. And it was something that just, it was a feeling that just came over the situation. And it was like a light switch that just went off and it literally never came back on. And this happened about a week after I had found out that I was with child. Almost 3 months didn't know, and I found out in the most worst way possible. I was at work and literally passed out head first, hit the concrete. They had to call the ambulance and bring me to the hospital, and my teeth was knocked out. My face was busted open. I had like 7 stitches across my face. My teeth were all cracked. It was just just awful experience. And a week later, still with stitches in my face, was just dealing with a person that I never thought that I had met before. I was almost like, who is this person? Who did I wake up to today? And that was the first sign. And then from then on, it was finding out certain things. Like, you know, I did have a stepchild, and then I found out that there was other children later on that I did not know about. You know, it was just like a riddle, you know, to Brandi's point. Every day I was confused. I was like, what's going to happen tomorrow? And in the midst of that, still together. And I had a person that I married that would call my parents every day and make them think that I was some crazy child of theirs that didn't know how to be a wife. And, you know, it was just, it was a lot.
I want you to speak to Brandi, and you too, Nichelle. This is very powerful because a lot of times there's like this lie that strong women, smart women, educated women, confident women cannot get caught up in a toxic love situation where you're being abused. People would look at people, sometimes the strongest personalities can get sucked, especially into this narcissistic mind wrangling that goes on. Can you speak to the women and that woman, Brandi, because you are that strong woman, about dismantling that myth of how these very powerful, influential beings do this love bombing and then this emotional manipulation, and how it truly sets in regardless of how fly, how strong, how wise you think you are?
Yeah. Me and Nichelle were talking last night about today and some of the things that we wanted to share. And one of the things that came up was that both of us came from different backgrounds. She came from a very solid family. Both of her parents are still married to this day, and just had a very loving family environment. And my life was different. You know, my father left our family when I was 11 years old, and I was missing that. And my life, to me, was in a disarray. And so for us, our lives were totally different. So I think it's important to highlight that we both fell for the same man because of who he was, or who we thought he was, I guess. And some of the things that he did was filling, for me, I can't speak for Nichelle, but I could say that it was filling a lot of void as far as the love that I was missing at home, or just in my life, or just whatever it felt that I needed. I was filling voids with who he was. And I thought, like I said, because he came to me in this perfect picture, I thought that's who he was. And I thought that he wanted to be this perfect person for my daughter. And yeah, I think that a person who comes into your life and pretends to be somebody who they're not is very hard to dictate, especially when they are good with their words and they are my manipulator, and all they know in their life is to be fake and a con artist, and they know how to get their way.
Nichelle, can you give us some examples of how the charismatic personality of someone who abuses in this way can kind of use people against you? Because one of the signs of those abusive relationships is something called triangulation, where the person who's abusing you will begin to destroy your relationship with people who are close to you and make you question their loyalty to you while breaking down those bonds and isolating you. And a lot of times people are not caught with that because they're so charismatic. So are there any examples of that, or can you give us an experience of how you were able to overcome the fear of dealing with someone who had that kind of influence, socially or otherwise?
I think in my situation, to Brandy's point earlier, he was very charismatic. I mean, everyone loved him. He knew what to say. He knew how to tailor a conversation, whether it was the truth or a lie, to fit in with whomever you brought him in contact with. And he just could win people over. And for me, being that, I'm considered feisty, and, considered I would speak my mind or whatever the case may be, that he kind of used that against me with people, and in a very smooth way. And it worked. It really worked. And he came across as, I'm going to be there for her, or he, would glamorify me on Facebook or whatever the case may be, just to make me feel like he is really, really there. And in actuality, he really wasn't. And I think, to Brandy's point, he knew for me that family was everything to me. So getting in really, really close to my dad, who has 3 girls, no sons, my sisters, who I talk to every single day of my life. So building a relationship with them, my mother, who cares for children, and again, he had a very infant child when I had met him. So it was just playing on all of the things that was important to me and my family that won us over. And once he won us over, he had all these other people believing individually, who he was to them. He would tell one person he did one thing to connect with them. He would tell another person he did another thing to have a connection with them. And later, I'm finding out all these different variations of stories that people knew of someone that I called my husband that I didn't know. I was like, what? So that's how. And again, that's where the confusion plays. So later you ask a question like, oh, so-and-so said you did this. I don't remember you ever saying you did that. And then that's where the drama starts.
Yes, yes. Oh my God. I just want to thank you for outlining that. Thank you, Ivory. Thank you, Kim. A lot of people in the comments are just saying they've been here, and I really am appreciating you all sharing this, because as empathic people or sensitive people who've been abused, there is a lot of mind wrangling you got to get through. I mean, being with someone who's an abusive individual is a mind fuck for your ass, and only the strong survive that kind of playing around. And it is also a prover of the real relationships in your life, because like Nichelle says, when you're in relationships with these type of people who are going through their own healing process but projecting it on you, only those who really truly see you for who you are, or who have believed you for the true being that you are, will be able to survive that type of manipulation to your image. Now, Brandi, I want to ask you, bring us back to when you came back into Nichelle's life. So take us back to where you came back again. Holy Spirit brought you back around, and talk to me and walk me through how you all began this bond through her awareness and your realization of her going through this abusive situation that you had come out of with the same individual.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I knew she was going to go through it. It was only a matter of time. But I, like she said earlier, a year later, she reached out to me via email. And her email said something to the sort of, I apologize for believing everything he said about you. Because now I'm on that end, and who knows what he's saying about me, or something like that. And
oh my goodness.
And I knew at that point that part of me, the ego, let me say, the ego of me wanted to be like, girl, I told you so, and I don't really care. Like, that's your problem now. The other part of me was like, no, you told her you was gonna be here. That's what you meant. And now it's time to step up to the plate and do that. And I responded via email, and I don't really remember what I said, but I know that later that day we had like hours of conversation. And I basically, at that point, it was just my responsibility to tell her that I was here, and that everything that she was going through was not a facade. It was real, and that I was going to be the person to help her through it. any way that I could. It's a very hard realization when people are not going through a situation like that to really understand what you're going through. And so for me, it was my responsibility to just be here for her and tell her, girl, you are not, you're not crazy. And it's okay to feel everything that you're feeling, but we're going to get through it. And so that was like a year later, and yeah.
Nichelle, tell us what you learned about loving yourself through coming out of this toxic love relationship, because I feel like there's a huge correlation between how much we love ourselves and our willingness to let go and be free of certain relationships. It's always a battle, and whoever's on the right side of the road wins, either that person in that relationship or you. And you clearly got to the tipping point, and that's when you and Brandi began working together. She assisted you on your healing. But what were you learning about your own self-love? What has this taught you about self-love?
I think, and it may actually correlate with the last question that you asked, like, when did I start seeing the signs? I was a person that went to church probably twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. And I was also that person that sat on, like, I used to go to EBC and I was sitting like the second or third row behind all the mothers, because I just felt like that would just distract me from anyone else that's walking in, and I'm just very honed in. And I say that to say I lived across the street from a church that was very prominent in Houston, and I never went. So when I decided that I didn't want to be a part of God anymore, I knew something was just off. I knew something was off. And that's what really did it for me. And then having, when Brandi did come back, well, what was the second? Tell me that question again. I wanted to touch on that and then answer this question. What did you?
Well, no, you're starting to kind of answer it already, because we always say, especially when we deal with knowing that God makes no mistakes, a lot of times in our healing, we understand that our abusers are our greatest teachers. So I was going to ask you the spiritual component of your healing.
Yeah.
How did that play a role in you
Um,
finally getting away? Because there has to be an empowerment to get out of a relationship like that. You can't just do it on your own.
I think, and Brandon and I spoke about this, and I told her that I actually realized how much I loved myself, where I think she felt differently. We felt different on this. And I was like, for me, it was, I knew who I was. She got married much younger than I got married at 32, and I was successful, and, and I had everything that I thought that I wanted in life. And I thought he was an added bonus. And saying that to say, I was whole. I always felt like I was always complete, like God doesn't make mistakes. And my parents had me at a very young age. So sometimes growing up, they were like, oh, your teenage parents, you was a mistake. No, God doesn't make mistakes. My parents would always teach me that. So I knew that. So for me, I realized that I loved myself more. I was ashamed of myself. I was embarrassed of what I've allowed myself to get into, because it did not fit the character, or the misjudgment. I'm just very upset that I had a misjudgment of someone that I thought I knew. So to answer your question, I just think my love for myself carried me through. And then once I gave birth to my daughter, that just was like a boost, an extra added bonus. If I could say that. Yeah, it's like an added bonus of love.
No, yes, that makes perfect sense. And before we close, I'm going to ask both of you to give some advice to all the empathic people out there. But before we do, you brought up something that I feel like we need to address. There are too many people who can't get free and heal in their lives because they're worried about what all these other motherfuckers are thinking about them, what they're going to say, who they're going to tell, and what story they're going to misinterpret on the Vine or IG, Facebook, or Twitter, or wherever. So can you all help dispel some of this by sharing some of the reasons why it's difficult for us to heal in public? What are the things that people do so we can tell people to stop doing them? And so if we do them, we can say, hey, stop that. Folks don't like it when they're trying to heal when you XYZ. What are some of the things, Brandi, you go first, because you experienced this even years before Nichelle, and I'm sure there were things that people were doing that were making it harder for you to be authentic about your experience. What are some of those things you think that people do that make it hard for us to just be real about our situations and come on out free?
I think the number one thing is saying that God doesn't want us to get a divorce. or just being, spiritual and religious and not being an issue for you. That was very hard for me. Like Nichelle said, I experienced this very young. I married him at 24, and our marriages were obviously years apart. And what I prayed about, I was praying about this whole video or recording today, and I just wanted God to give me something to give to everybody. And so what I would say is that because it was years ago for me, what I didn't experience is what Nichelle experienced. And that was the resources that she had to heal. I didn't get a chance to heal the way that I needed to after I left him. I literally left him, graduated college, and went into my next relationship and just filled my voids with the next feeling of what I thought was love. And I continued to do that for a few years. And so what I would say today to any woman that is holding on to some old trauma or old pain or old hurt, go back and fix it. Go back and heal, because years ago, therapy wasn't important. Therapy wasn't talked about. Black Girls Rock and all these Black girl movements and just everything that's out there, women empowerment and women love, wasn't talked about. So in 2011, I didn't have that. I didn't have another woman building me up, praying for me. I didn't have another woman speaking life into me and telling me about their own experiences. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have that. So if I could do it, and if I could be where I am today, you can too. But most importantly, God just wanted me to tell the woman that's struggling right now, that hasn't dealt with their past trauma, to go deal with it. Because once you deal with it, you'll experience another level of life that you've never experienced before. And it's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. And I salute you, sister. You are shining your light very brightly, Queen.
Thank you.
Regardless of the resources that you may have had, it is very clear that God has shined his healing power on you. And that's what we want other people to see, that it's possible, whether you have a system or not, whether you have a supportive family or not, that it is possible to heal and to actually come out of that type of situation. And I just want to salute you for your authenticity. You know, I love transparency. It shines like a diamond. Nichelle, what would you like to first answer the first question, if you could, just to remind all of us, and this is the reason why we're doing this during Mental Health Awareness Month, because people often are so trapped in what they're dealing with and their pain because they're afraid of what people are going to think, say, or do about their reality. So thank you for sharing yours. And what are some ways that people make it difficult, and how can we stop doing that?
I think we sometimes get in our own way. And that's just really unfortunate. And that's not spending a lot of time with yourself and getting to know yourself. And like Brandi mentioned, healing from past trauma, and not necessarily relationship trauma. It can be a multitude of things, Prior to getting married, I had a lot of health trauma that I had experienced, and I also had to deal with it. And you don't have to, I guess sometimes people are afraid of getting help, and you can get help and not let people know that you're getting help. But getting help is really, really important. You want to be your best self for everything, for yourself. You can't be a good mother, you can't be a good daughter, you can't be a good professional person in your career if you're not good to yourself. And that's really important. And to be completely vulnerable here, I was diagnosed with a mental illness through this. I lost everything, and I was on medication that I never thought in life that I would be able to take. I mean, there were some days that I was just a zombie. And I even have, I'm in the process of moving, and I even have like a bucket of all these pills that I used to have to take just to be alive, so to speak. And it's a reminder to me of what I don't want to go back to. And it wasn't until I decided to get right and get over my pride of having to be diagnosed from a psychiatrist of what was truly happening to me. and realizing that I'm not going to have my old life back. And that's totally okay. God has given me a new life, and I need to fall in love with this new life before he takes this new life away from me, these new experiences. And that's what I think is really important. And yes, to Brandi's point, God doesn't want us to get a divorce. I do not, scream
Now,
divorce.
hold on. I want both of you to make this. I need both of you to make a copyright claim that we did not get that directly from God. God said we did. I want us both to make sure we're not saying that. Now, it is, there's people, doctrines and religions and books that say that, but I don't want us to say that we're saying to anybody that God said, don't get a divorce, because I think that's what we do sometime. And
Right, and that's
I
to
want to
your
make sure
point.
we're not saying it.
That is what people say, because that's what people said to me, and of course, I wouldn't share what was actually happening, but they'd be like, oh, the first year is rough. And, to be transparent, Brandi and I both was literally, it took a while for us to get a divorce, but from the bulk of our marriage was 1 year. Almost exactly 1 year, when we did the math. So I think it is important for people to know that no, God doesn't say or not say. Everyone is different. Your scenario is different. We all know what we can deal with and what we want to deal with. But to do right by yourself, you have to love yourself first. You have to be okay with being alone. And where Brandi mentioned it, that situation forced her to be in potentially other relationships that probably wasn't as bad as the one that she was in her marriage. Well, for me, I feel like it was a little opposite. Although I love love, I'm not bitter. I believe in love. I'm a hopeless romantic, but it did not make me want to jump into something else. I think maybe there's only one man that I've allowed to get extremely close to me, and that's someone that has always been in my life prior to me even meeting my ex-husband, and that's just of my comfort level. So I pray as I'm continuing to heal that I continue this process, because I do believe in love, and I do think, and I'm thankful that I'm not bitter. And I think Brandi and I can both speak in the past couple of years how we've even seen each other grow through our friendship, and being encouraging of one another when we notice certain things that we know are triggers for each other.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, because I experienced that too. In my own divorce, I had a lot of people tell me what they wanted God to let me know. And one thing I had to let them know is that God knew me and I knew God. And when we let people have their own relationship with God, we can really let people heal on all new levels. And so I really appreciate that type of transparency. And I feel so many people have so much that are coming through the thread. One of the main things that you said, though, that I want to end on, and I want to ask one of you to say a prayer at the end for all of the hearts on the thread and people watching this, because I think there's the only thing more powerful than you all now sharing your testimony is activating it with a closing prayer from your own healing journey. So the main thing that I got from the thread here is Ashley said, fall in love with this new life. And I think that 2020 is teaching us all to do that. And one of the main reasons some of us can't get out of bad relationships or bad jobs or just bad shit with our families or whatever is because we're so afraid to lose the life that we're losing to get the new thing. But I'm really glad you brought that up, Nichelle, because when we let go and we say, hey, it's not going to be the same, it will never be the same, but never be the same doesn't mean never good again. Mm-hmm. So I'm just so grateful that I feel like people are healing through this. I feel like people are being activated through this. And I'm so grateful. I want to give y'all a chance to give some final thoughts before we close in prayer, either one of you.
You want me to go?
Tag team.
Wow. My final thoughts would be that I feel like a lot of my testimony is shared because I'm now raising a daughter who's 14, who has to go through life. And I want her to experience life at its greatest potential without having to go through all the things that I went through. And so I would say to the woman who is confused on whether they should be leaving or not, if nothing else, if you have children, do it for them in their future. This man has now produced 3 children who are all girls. And those 3 girls have so much life ahead of them. And I have chills saying this, but I can't even imagine what their life is going to be like, because now they have to deal with what their dad has caused in other women's lives. So if nothing else, do it for your children and do it for their future.
Ashe. Nichelle?
My closing thoughts would be continue the conversations. You know, I'm thankful that it was placed upon Brandi's heart to bring this forth to me, and thankful that you were receptive to us, Marianne, for us to have this. And, you know, we both were really nervous because even when we are together and we're like, oh, we're sister wives, it's like, what? Like weird. But, you know, it's not so weird to us anymore. And it's actually powerful where women can come together, and not to bash men, but just come together to be there for one another, whatever it may be. And I think that's truly important. It's important to not turn the blind eye, especially when kids are involved. And that was a lot of what the hurt that I dealt with, people turning the blind eye to me and my child. And I just, before even having children, I could never do that. So I'm like, oh my God, like, how can people do this? Like, children did not ask to be here. And it is our job as responsible adults to keep our eyes on them, you know, because they did not ask to be here. And I cannot stress that enough. And thinking about this quarantine, I felt like after having my child, I was in a quarantine with a monster. So the fact that, you know, look at the rates, the percentage of all the calls that have gone up for domestic abuse and domestic violence and child protective services. And, you know, people have so much built up anger inside of them that they have not dealt with for years. And they put it out on other people. And then other people like me and Brandi, we got to get up and smile and, you know, be happy for everyone else who is important to us that we want to support. And it just comes to a point where we have a breaking point too. Fortunately for us, you know, we didn't break so much that we weren't able to be there for other people. And I think that's why we connect, you know, on the level that we connect with, because our vision and our mission of just our personal morals and beliefs are right and aligned. And I couldn't thank her enough for being on this journey with me, because it has not been easy. And even her having to open up old wounds, that wasn't easy for her, but us putting that to the side to be there for each other and other people. That's what's most important. And that's what I would like to share, that keep the conversations going. Do not turn a blind eye. If you see something, say something and be there for people, because it could be the last time that you see them or talk to them, or it could be your child, or it could be your mom, it could be your sister. And we just need to stop waiting until it touches us personally to want to get involved and do something about it. And yes, you know, this was my line name, so I'm trying to keep it minimal, but this is a very passionate subject for me, because, and not just because I went through it, because there are so many other people that are going through it that are not getting the help that they need, because they're scared, because they're afraid, because people are going to judge them, people are going to talk about them, people think that's what they get, or that's what they deserve, or they could have told them, or shoulda, coulda, woulda. That stuff really, really, really disrupts my spirit when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No, that's why I'm just sitting here saying, clear that throat chakra and let it be known, because this is why this is an activation, because people are going to be free, Nichelle, by the freedom that you're speaking about, your reality. And it's not if it were your sister or if it were your so-and-so, it is somebody around you experiencing abuse and trauma. If not you, and you've just stifled yourself not to realize it. So this type of conversation and activation is healing so many people, and keeping the conversation going with both of you is what both of you do philanthropically. Can you tell everybody how to continue to network with you and to stay connected with you as we're keeping the conversation going to help many people heal?
For me, you can follow me on Instagram at brandi.orlene or the dope mom.
I love it, the dope mom. Okay. Ashe, Nichelle.
Yes, for me, I am the founder of Happy Mama, Happy Minnie, and that's Happy Mama Happy Minnie, and that's at Instagram, also Facebook. So yeah, And I have a website, www.happymamahappymany.org. And there's many ways of opportunities where you can give, donate, volunteer, be a part of the movement of us spreading the love and the awareness of mental health, especially with women and children in our communities.
Well, thank you, Queen, so much for shining your light bright to all of us. Thank you, everybody on the thread. Thank you all for joining and sharing and vibrating on this level where we're all on the same frequency to heal. And I'm going to ask one of you to say a closing prayer as we go. Who would like to volunteer?
Why me?
I'm the big sister wife.
Okay. Father, we just want to come saying thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for placing it upon my heart to have this conversation, to touch other lives of other women and other men, actually, who may be in an abusive or toxic relationship. Lord, I pray right now for every single individual that has watched this interview today, who will watch this interview later, and who will be touched. I pray that if they're going through something that is toxic, I pray that you just continue to place it on their hearts to work with you and to build a relationship with you, to do what it is that you've called them to do and lead them to their destiny in life, God. Lord, I just pray for every person, again, that's watched this today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Bless the two individuals on this interview today with me, and continue to just flourish their life and blossom their life. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Ashe, namaste. I love you guys. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody on the thread. Share this out, and most importantly, share this activation out in your everyday life. Sending so much peace and love. Ashe.
Ashe.
Okay, so now I'm going to see how to close this, because this is my first time. Y'all know it's my first time doing the Zoom. Let's see. All right, I think I can go.
You got to turn it off.
I think you got to turn it off on live first.
Okay, I gotta turn the live off first, right?
Yeah.
I gotta turn off the live, and I'm doing that.
I think.
I guess I'm just gonna log out here. Let's see if that works.
I don't know if it's like, let me.
Okay, now I'm here back. Where are we?
But it still says live.
Oh, here we go. I gotta end it here.